there, blues fans. John here with the Blues Guitar Institute, and this is your Tuesday Blues. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the all-important topic of how to make your guitar playing sound more musical. We know that we've got to practice scales. You got to learn your chords, and you got to practice. The thing is that when you practice your scale patterns and you start running them in order up and down the neck, then when you go to take that and turn it into real playing, jamming with a friend or writing or anything along those lines, that you tend to sound like the scales. As they say in baseball, you play how you practice. And that definitely hurts us as guitarists because we don't want to sound like we're just regurgitating scales. That's not what we're going for. What we're going for is that expressive sound that we can coax out of the guitar. So today we're going to take a look at that example piece that I just played. We're going to strip it down to the basic fundamentals of it. We're going to make it sound kind of scalar, and then I'll build this back up to what you just heard, and we'll talk about the things that you can do in your playing to make things like this sound more musical. So let's get started by just taking a look at the bare bones version of what I just played. This is in A, and I'm going to start out with an A7 bar chord played here at the 5th fret. That's sort of the basis for what we're doing here. And let's just look at a bar of that groove played in a real sort of strict, just no life to it, just to kind of build a ground underneath us. So we'll do this a couple times, and then we can move into the lick, the little melody, that sort of melodic idea that we really developed through that little piece. And even more basic than that, we get this with the notes kind of ringing and running into each other. You can tell that definitely sounds familiar. It sounds sort of like what you just heard at the beginning of this video, but it's definitely lacking a lot of emotion. So let's start putting in things bit by bit that you can do on the guitar to get more of that expressive feeling out of the guitar. The first thing right off the rip that we do is we make use of this minor third in the key of A. This is going to be a C note, minor third to major third move. This you'll hear all the time in blues, and you can achieve this sound by making sure you've got a really solid bar happening at the 5th fret, and then just hammering from the 3rd string 5th fret, that C note, up to the C sharp. That's the minor third to major third move. And when you do it kind of quickly, it's a great way to kind of hint at the chord, add something a little extra to the chord. We're starting out technically more in an A minor 7, but we're going to hammer on very quickly into that major sound. So practice getting that done. You can do that in different chord shapes and really coax out that major sound from underneath the chord. But this bar shape works great for it. The next thing that we're going to do is, instead of just doing like 2 strums down rhythmically, we already know the first part. We're going to just do this nice and subtle hammer into the chord, but then we can do a very quick brush stroke up on the top 2-3 strings. And you just kind of pop it. So we're going to add another real element, a rhythmic element here. Staccato. That's where we really choke down on the strings and you hear this short and choppy note. So here, that upstroke, we didn't let that ring. You could, but we're going to add as much expression, as much emotion as we can. And one great way to do that is with that staccato and just kind of getting in the groove. And right here, the first bit of this, we're really setting up the groove. And I'm doing one other thing to really help rhythmically just after I do that brush up. And that is, I'm returning my hand to the strings, and you get this light sort of snare drum percussive sound where the strings kind of snap against the fretboard. And And you can do that subtly, you can do it very pronounced. For right now, practice just getting this little move down. The hammer on with the staccato upstroke, and then immediately coming down on those strings with your hand. And I just kind of ball up my hand into a loose fist and then just kind of pop the strings. Doesn't take a lot of effort. I'm not banging on the guitar here, but just... Alright, you can see we got something going just right here, even without the melody. And remember, the notes that we were using in this melody was starting on the 5th fret on the 2nd string, this E, moving up to the F sharp, and then this G here, and we're going to work through a different sequence using mostly those notes. That's really what we're going for. That's the basic structure of this melody. And remember, when we play it without any technique at all, you get something like this, where the notes just kind of ring and run into each other. But what we're going to do is use that staccato technique and add that choking down sound and have it sound a little more like this. And I'm going to pick this mostly with my thumb when I'm playing this in a real situation. It just helps me kind of get down in there, even though that's not normally my finger picking technique. This just feels right for it. And it's, to me, an easier way to get the staccato going on this single string. Because what I'm doing is, when I strike down with my thumb, I'm immediately coming back with my thumb and choking out the note. So that's what we've got if we just take that same melodic line and add the staccato. But then we can also do a nice little hammer on, and we're going to do that sort of at the beginning like we did with the chord. We can do it from this E to the F sharp and still add the staccato once we get to the F sharp. Like that. So we've really just got those few things that we just talked about. We've got the hammer into the chord, the rhythmic upstroke followed by the crash down, and then we move into the melody. We're going to hammer in, and then you make use of that staccato playing. And you can do that with any finger, but again, I'm kind of changing it up here as I go. But in a live situation, I'm more times than not just getting down, bearing down on this thing with my thumb. So then we can sort of flesh out the rest of the chords and the rest of this movement. But we've got the core elements here to take this to this. And of course we start moving that melody around. Let's have a listen to this thing played up to speed, and I'll play through the whole 12-bar progression. We're really going to work through this A, then into this D7 shape here, and then our E7 shape here. Be sure to grab the tab for this lesson and follow along as the melody starts to develop. But I really want you to hear, and then more importantly, when you play this on your own, start to feel the difference in these two ways of playing this. So remember, a real quick snapshot of playing this without a lot of feeling might sound like this. But here's where we're going to take this. 2, 3, 4. There's a whole world of difference in those two ways of approaching this, and one is definitely more musical. It's got more feeling. We're really focusing on developing the emotion as we move through this thing. So practice this. I do encourage you to grab the tab for this particular lesson because we didn't necessarily go note by note here, but if you pick up the tab, then you'll pick up those licks. But really sit down and practice getting into it. Practice adding these specific techniques right where I did in this lesson. But then the cool thing really starts to come out of your playing when you start adding other things. We didn't even talk about bending. We didn't talk about sliding. We didn't talk about varying the dynamics, how loud or how quietly you're playing. There's a whole world out there of guitar techniques at our disposal that can really make this thing not only sound musical, but sound like your music. And that's what we're going for. You put your own sonic stamp on this when you play. But give these concepts a try, work through this material, practice hard, play on, and I'll see you in the next lesson.